An inspiring movie. Thank you all for again coming out today to get this started. First, before I turn it over to Delegate Tran, one of our newest members of the House of Delegates. A few thank yous. First of all, most importantly, I want to thank Reverend Pastor Darrell White, who's here, and also Bethlehem Baptist Church, allowing us to use this facility. I had to find a venue where you could fit so many people in one room and around here, and they were terrific in allowing us to use it here. And Brenda Fison. Brenda's been great getting us with the logistics, get everything set, and making us happen. Thank you, Brenda. John, is that you back? There's John. Dallas Cowboys jersey. Don't pay attention to the jersey. John handles our audio visual today. And John, thank you for appreciate that. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Kathy, who's going to introduce somebody and talk a little bit, and then come back to me. Right back there.
That's right.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Tran, and I represent the 42nd District in the Virginia House of Delegates. I'm really honored and delighted to be with you here today to observe the 98th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, but also to kick off the Virginia's Ratify the ERA campaign. So the 42nd District has a very significant role in the passage of the 19th Amendment. And as you saw the movie tell, the Occoquan Workhouse is actually located in my district. And I'm going to introduce Pat in a little bit to come and talk about the Turning Point Suffragist Memorial and the need to tell the stories of Alice Paul and all the women who were treated so cruelly, but whose experience at the Occoquan Workhouse was really such a pivotal point in the suffragist movement. I want to tell you kind of from the bottom of my heart why I think this is important, why I am so appreciative of you coming to spend your Sunday afternoon with us and for your efforts and the work that you're going to put in to helping make sure that we make history in Virginia. You know, I was knocking on the doors today and I met Anne Marie out in Cross Point, and she's my constituent. She told me, you know, she's a recently retired federal civil servant, worked in the intelligence agencies, and has 3 daughters. And she goes, I tell them to vote every single time because it's so important that their voices are heard. She told me about how she had this distinguished career in a very male-dominated field, and how throughout her time serving our country, she was always asked, what are you doing here? You're a woman. You shouldn't be, in intelligence. You can't be doing this type of work. And it's that both systemic and cultural sexism that we continue to deal with, is why it's so important that we pass the ERA. It's because we are still fighting for equal pay for equal work, right? We are still fighting to make sure that we are able to own and make decisions about our own bodies, that we still need access to health care, that we still need safe work environments. And for all of those reasons, we need to make sure that we're enshrining equality in our Constitution, that we are attacking what's happening both institutionally and culturally and across the board. And so I'm so excited to be part of this campaign, to work with Scott and with so many in both the Senate and the House to make sure that we make history in Virginia. So I'm going to introduce you to Pat, and she'll talk a little bit about our Turning Point Memorial.
Thank you. It's great to be here. If some of you saw this movie for the first time and you're learning about this history for the first time, don't feel bad, because our historians that work with us like to say that the suffrage movement is the best kept secret in American history, and it is. What we saw today, this movie that we saw today, where these women were fighting for equal rights, that was a very small period of time in the suffrage movement. In fact, the suffrage movement began in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. There were 5 million women who fought for 72 years to get the vote for us. So don't feel bad if you didn't know all about this before today, because most people don't know very much about it. The Turning Point Suffragist Memorial, our mission is to educate, empower, and inspire present and future generations to remain vigilant in the quest for equal rights. We are all about equal rights. We are building a memorial to honor these 5 million women who fought 72 years to get us the vote. This memorial is intended to be a visual symbol and an educational tool to elevate them to their proper place in history. Fewer than 8% of all of the memorials in our country are to women. And we think that these 5 million women who fought for us to have democracy deserve to be honored. After our memorial is built, we are going to be establishing a Turning Point Institute for middle and high school girls, the purpose of which is to teach them about leadership and to hopefully instill in them and become a turning point in their lives so that they understand that if they want change about something about which they are passionate, and that can be their choosing or whatever it is they're passionate about, you have to be intentional, you have to be involved, and you have to work and strategize, and you have to be an advocate. So today we have some information for you when you leave about our Turning Point Memorial, but I would also like to invite you 2 years from today, August 26, 2020, to the dedication of the Turning Point Suffragist Memorial. We're still raising money. I don't know exactly what we're going to be dedicating, but we are going to be dedicating that memorial 2 years from today. So right on, march on, and all about equal rights. Thank you so much.
Great. So, and this memorial goes right in Occoquan, right in our area. So if you ought to go down, there's a museum down there, check it out. And what you saw in that movie happened literally 6-7 miles from here. So a lot of it on both sides, actually. I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to give you a little bit of Army with a few facts and a few legal things, and talk for a little bit about why the ERA is still important and why it's still alive. And then I'm going to introduce our special guest who came to be here today. First of all, I want to tell you about ERA is still alive. You know, a lot of what you hear back, you read the George Will column, and some other people that will say that the deadline passed in 1982. Well, I want to tell people a couple things. Number one is Congress put that deadline on there. Congress can change the deadline. And Congress is about to change.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yes.
So just keep that in mind. They could also retroactively accept ratifications that happen after the fact. In addition to that, for those of you who have friends who are strict constructionists who believe in the black and white of the Constitution, you ought to remind them that there's nothing in the Constitution that said they can put a deadline on a constitutional amendment. Okay? And it was common for constitutional amendments that didn't have ratification deadlines until about 1910. And so this whole concept of there's actually a time period to ratify is kind of a new concept that's never actually been tested by a court. And in fact, many of you all probably know the 27th Amendment. It took 214 years to ratify that. It was finally ratified, I think, about 10 years ago, the one that says the Congress, their salaries don't go up until after an election. So that one was pending for over 200 years before it became part of the Constitution. So to the extent any of your more conservative friends want to argue about whether we can do this or not, please feel free to point those things out to them. Now, I want to talk really quick about what's going on in Richmond, just so you have an understanding of what we're dealing with. Of course, we had a kind of a momentous election about 12 months ago. And, right, and the House of Delegates went from having 34, 35 Democratic members to having 49 by one film canister. And so right now in the House of Delegates, it's 51 to 49, Republican, Democrat, okay? In the state Senate where I serve, we are 21-19. Now, even though both bodies are only apart by one vote, the way our colleagues on this side of the aisle stack the committees, they stack the committees very disproportionately. And so the Senate of Virginia has actually passed the ERA 3 times now, including the first time I introduced it in 2015 or 2016 session. They passed it by 3 votes because the chairman of the Privileges and Elections Committee, Senator Jill Vogel, Republican from Winchester, she ran for lieutenant governor, she votes for it, and it used to come out of P&E. They didn't like that anymore, so they started sending it to a different committee where it's like 8 to 4, 9 to 4. And so I've been able to get 2 Republicans to vote for it so far. I need one or 2 more. In the House, the chairman of the House will not even schedule ERA for a committee hearing. And that committee is stacked about 3 to 1, something like that. So what we're basically trying to do is to create enough public pressure, enough interest from the public to get the leadership and the majority right now to change their position, schedule a hearing in the House, and to get flips and votes in the Senate. And because right now, we actually have 23 senators out of 40, 23, that's a majority, that have either sponsored or co-sponsored the bill. If we get the bill on the floor of the House, we have at least, I think, 52, 53 delegates who have counted. There's Republicans in this House of Delegates that support. We can't get out of committee. But if we create enough public pressure, then we can get some action in Richmond and make Virginia number 38. And so that's what we need you all to do. Now, that's one last thing. I want to talk really quick about why it's important. You know, some people say, well, I thought, actually, most people don't know that women's equality is not in the Constitution. Most people think it's already there. They feel like, well, women have rights, don't they? The only mention of women in the Constitution is in the 19th Amendment. That's the only right that women have that's constitutionally protected, the only one. And Justice Scalia, in fact, has made it clear that the 14th Amendment, Equal Protection Clause, only applies to men. Or he says that, you know, specifically, intentionally didn't mention women in that amendment. And so what that means is that when the courts look at an action the government takes against women, it gets treated differently than race, religion, national origin, which are called protected classes. If the government tries to discriminate against somebody on the basis of race, religion, national origin, the government has the burden of proof to justify it. But when it comes to a woman, the government discriminates against women, women have to come to court, and women have the burden of proof. And by putting the ERA in the Constitution, that would change things. And you know, ask me, what would that change? For example, you know, how are women still discriminated against by the government? I'm not talking about private discrimination, which is protected by the Civil Rights Act, but government discrimination. Think about military service, what we're still dealing with in the military. Think about, for example, child care policy. Think about health care policy, right? There's lots of issues where the government still makes decisions that still, I think, could be taken into account in the courts. It could be addressed in the courts if we had equal rights in the Constitution. So it is legally important. Women are not completely protected. They're not equally protected. And giving women equal rights should not be a partisan issue. It's a bipartisan issue that everybody ought to believe in. And so we need to get that message out to people. We need to make people understand we need to get this in our Constitution. And that's why we're here today. So what do you need to do? Number one, you need to spread the word. Talk to your friends. Talk to your husbands, wives. Talk to your children. Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your coworkers. Educate people about this, because people do not understand how important it is, number one. Number two, let's say, contact your state legislator. Tell them you're paying attention and they need to hear from you, okay? Many of you up here probably have favorable legislators. Call your friends, tell them to contact their legislators, because our ones who are voting against this are the ones that need to hear from people. Number three, we're going to need you to come to Richmond. This coming winter, you know, is going to be do or die. We have a very short session. We have a 45-day session. The action on this is going to happen in the first 2 or 3 weeks. If it happens, we're going to need people to come to Richmond, to show up, to make noise, to show public support so people know they need to do something. So we're going to need you to act and get involved. And you need to get your friends to act and get involved. So do those three things, and we might get this done in Virginia this year. And if we don't, then we can talk about that in the next election cycle. But hopefully we'll get it done this cycle. Now, having said that, I want to introduce our special guest here today, which is Alyssa Milano. Come on.